This is my grail. I started collecting vinyl, and this album is one of the main reasons why. I grew up in southwestern Ontario, a very unique part of Canada surrounded on three sides by the United States. An area where physical boundaries don't stop television or radio signals, but they do stop your ability to stream some music, and this album is one of them. With the rise of digital music and streaming services, like most, I got rid of all my physical music, and this CD was in that purge. I used to own a copy, and when I started collecting vinyl, this was on the top of my list, and unfortunately, it still is. Record collecting is on the rise, and in 2022, vinyl sales surpassed CD sales for the first time in 35 years, and like many, my collecting has just begun. Come along my journey as I talk with other vinyl collectors, local record store owners, as well as bands about what makes them spin. On this episode, we'll explore what inspires people to collect, and we'll reminisce about the first albums that they purchased. I'll take you down to Windsor's historic Dr. Disc Records, and we'll chat with Brendan Scott Friel about producing his first piece of vinyl. I'm Syx Langemann, and this is Spinning Stories.
It's about to be a year.
We're new.
I've been collecting records since I was 8 years old, in like the late 70s. That's like, seriously, I'm not even lying.
This basement was like where I learned music from my older brother, who was Zeppelin, Jethro Tull,
Stones,
and he was 8 years older than I was, so I got to just sit down here and listen to him play albums. That's where it all started.
As a kid, my dad had a very big collection of albums, and I remember vividly as a kid going through, remembering the album cover of Kansas, or the album cover of the Beatles, or the album cover of Tattoo You by the Stones. And that's what started my collection, was not because I loved the music, but because it brought back memories of things in my childhood and songs and being in a certain place at a certain time. And it's not because I think that the albums are, worth gazillions of dollars. They mean everything to me. That's where I'm hoping that my love for music will be handed down to my son through these albums. And he too can share the memories that I shared. And then he has his own memories that he can build as he gets a little bit older.
What inspired me to start collecting? Honestly, it started with that record player back there. I thought it was really cool. So then it starts with little things, going to Dr. Disc, getting a record here and there. Then it just grew.
My vice principal, she found out I was into music. She was getting rid of her records, and for some reason, she chose me to give the records to. And I remember just having this weird 180 experience where I was like, wait, she was this strict disciplinarian, Nurse Ratched kind of vibe. All of a sudden she's giving me records and I'm like, you got Floyd in here, Jethro Tull? I'm like, what? And my brain exploded, and she just gave me I think it was close to 150 records that she was getting rid of. And that's how my collection started, was through her. So I owe her that way. It's like such a bizarre way to start.
I used to be more caught up in collecting and stuff, but I put my whole collection in here and kind of purged that out. So I was bringing in my own stuff to strangers, and I was just like, I want to give a little speech on each one of these things I'm selling. But you don't do that, you just let it go. I get a kick out of more just getting people what they want. I like what I like, you like what you like. As long as someone walks out of here happy, I'm fine. I just want anybody to feel welcome in here. I remember going into record stores, and back in the old days, people that worked at the record stores could be mean and stuff. There's no way that can fly anymore, which is really nice, because I always hated it. Anyone's allowed in here, except if you steal. No thieves. Or welcome here, that's a better, allowed.
When I was younger, I had much more of the mindset of quantity over quality. And now the more you accumulate, space becomes an issue, cost becomes an issue. So now it's more about fleshing out certain artists or, very particular records I don't have versus accumulating massive quantities of it. I'm at the point now where the quantities, I think, at a pretty comfortable level. I'm not trying to make it an incremental thing. I mean, it is cool when you're talking to other record heads and people ask you how many you have, and I think there's a little bit of ego in there for most record collectors to say they have a very high number, and I get that. But yeah, for me now, it's more about kind of fine-tuning and just finding the niche albums I really want.
I don't really want my collection to get much bigger than it is, although I feel like it's probably gonna. I'm almost at 1,100 now. I'd like to keep it this size. I see people's collections that are thousands deep. Having a collection that's 1,100, I don't have time for. There's always that struggle. When you have a lot of records, there's certain ones that I would listen to once a week. But then it's always like, oh, I've got that stack of stuff I haven't listened to yet.
This room is just right with 1,000 records, 2 people, a bottle of wine and a case of beer. That's all we have room for in here.
My daughter has been getting my cast-offs, my doubles. She got my old turntable. She got, I set her up with her own system.
He knew I had that shitty turntable. And he was like, you can't play any good records on that. It's gonna eat them up. And I'm like, yeah, it will. But I'm rocking a hard place, Dad. I mean, come on.
She's got the bug now too. She's at Dr. Disc as often as I am. And it's neat to see that happen, see where she's going.
He would always tell stories about like, he was really into music when he was younger. Was in a band, like drove a cool car, but things happen and you end up selling your record collection for beers. Now he's back into collecting. He's given me my lovely setup and he's really opened the door for me. He's definitely the reason that I started down this crazy path.
To see my 27-year-old daughter actually spend her hard-earned money on something that I did when I was a kid too, yeah, it's pretty special.
I want to tell you the story of how I think I was 5 and I had traveled to Ottawa to visit my aunt with my brother. And we went to a shopping mall and the usual aunt kind of thing, like, here's $10, $20, whatever it was. I just ran to the music store and I grabbed this record that I had recognized, I think, from my cousin's collection, and I was just like, this is what I want. And my aunt was like, are you sure you don't want a toy? Like, you're 5. No, this is what I want. It was Led Zeppelin 4. And it totally changed my life.
I remember the first time I bought Dr. Junior Green Mine with my own money, and my dad was waiting out in the rain in his black Meteor. Wouldn't go in the shop with me.
The first album I ever bought myself was Pinkerton by Windsor. It was like my first purchase. That was just like so. I remember buying it.
First record I ever got was Blink-182's self-titled album. I got like the 10-year deluxe edition of it from Hot Topic. It was like a limited edition pressing. I used to buy a lot of Hot Topic records.
It was the entire audio track of Monty Python and the Holy Grail, which I wasn't aware was a movie until a friend at school asked me if I had seen it, and I said, seen it? And I knew all the references and everything because I had heard the movie.
Actually, this copy of Damaged, this record was one of the first I ever bought. It might have been this one, actually. I bought this from Listen Records in Edmonton when I was 14. I bought this from Listen Records in Edmonton when I was 14.
I visited many listening rooms, but nothing compares to the basement of CKLW, home of the Big 8 and Rosalie Tremblay. I met up with Dan McDonald to dig through and talk about records.
Well, look at some of the gems you find, right? Like randomly, you know what? Here's something funny. I didn't know Peggy Lipton had a record. I know Peggy Lipton from Twin Peaks. I just literally stuck my hand out. I'm like, Peggy Lipton? Yeah, that's Peggy Lipton. Holy moly. I didn't know she had a record. That's crazy. I knew as an actress, I didn't know she had a record. So that's the little gems that you find. The first grown-up record I had as a kid was actually a solid gold CKLW Big 8 record. And the first track I heard, and I will never forget this moment, I have a weird memory like this. I dropped the needle, it was Bob Seger's Heavy Music. And something in my head just went bing on, and like it recalibrated my brain and sent me on this musical direction that I've been on since then.
And that's how I felt about my first album. It made me feel kind of grown up. The only thing better than talking with collectors about their first albums is talking with artists about the first time they made vinyl.
This is my first vinyl, the newest release, and it's something I've always really wanted. I'm really excited about it.
I came in and he was playing a show and he had his merch. I'm like, I don't have that yet. I need it.
If you make something you're proud of, inevitably you're gonna want it on vinyl. There's some permanence to it that just feels important when you make a product you're really, really proud of like that. So I wasn't thinking about it at the time, but I was just trying to write the best song, and I knew if I could write the best album, I would want that on vinyl forever. There's specifics when you're pressing on vinyl. Ideally, kind of as you're getting towards the middle of the vinyl, the tracks get a little softer, you put the louder here, and just thinking in terms of an A side and a B side. No one thinks in A and B because we don't consume music that way anymore, but I very much do. Every album I put out, there's an A side and a B side, and those are very specific journeys. It affected the sequencing the most, I would say, of anything. The order the songs came in are really important. The best experience you're gonna get is if you listen to it online. Dude, that day I was so nerdily just happy and excited because I knew when the box came, I know what these are. This is my test press. And I was just so excited that it was real. I still, when I put it down, I still didn't think when I put the needle on that my music was gonna come out for some reason. It just didn't seem real. It seems, I don't know. It's like, I imagine, I guess, kind of like hearing your song on the radio for the first time. It was that experience again for me, and you know, I'm older now, you don't get those many experiences. Sales of vinyl versus sales of the CDs I pressed of this album are completely lopsided. Everyone wants vinyl, they're willing to pay more for the product. It's a challenge, right? Because it's obviously much more expensive for me to press vinyl, and I don't make as much money on it, for sure. But it still feels better. I still enjoy it. I'm happy it happened. It felt like the right kind of investment for me. Everything from now on, I will definitely be putting on vinyl for sure.
Join me next time as I head out to the haunted Vintage and Vinyl. We'll take a trip with the Brandy Alexanders, and we dive deep into the grooves and talk about the current record-making options. All this and more on the next Spinning Stories.
We have history, and you say you're missing me, but you look so happy in those photos with him. One last time, you say again,